Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Game. So Derek and I swear this is going to be the last video on OutRun 2 I run for years because I have been comparing every single version to try to get to the crux of which OutRun 2 is the best ever released, whether it's on arcades, on consoles, or otherwise. That's what we're going to be doing today. We're taking a look at OutRun 2 SP-SDX versus OutRun 2006, the PC version with the new modifications, with a little bit of Xbox 360 thrown in because they're the three leading contenders for the best version of OutRun ever made. We're starting off with SP-SDX, and I will leave a logo on the screen so you know which version you're watching. Additionally, I've turned this into a bit of a competition, and DD, the man from Washington himself, is going to be playing the PC version of the game. I am playing the arcade, and we're seeing who gets the furthest in a 15-course run to end the tie from the previous video. So it's Video Game Esoterica against Video Game Esoterica West Coast branch, and we'll see who wins. But the reality is the winner is you, because whether you play SP-SDX on the Lindberg or if you play on PC, this game, of course, is just straight up one of the best arcade games ever made. Now, switching over to the PC version of the game, the first thing you're going to notice is a complete color shift. These have different color profiles, and of course, depending on what GPU you're using, you may see something even different. The reality is every single version of OutRun 2 looks slightly different. None of them are ugly. It is an absolutely amazing game to look at, so a lot of this is going to come down to complete subjectivity as to what you'd like to see, and that is the thing. The 360 version looks different than the PlayStation 3 version, looks different than the arcade version, looks different than PC, because basically every single one of these games is running on slightly different graphical hardware, so you're going to get a different result depending on where you play them. But as far as the fun factor is concerned, across the 360, across the arcade, and across PC, it's the exact same game with the same performance, same amazing soundtrack, and same core gameplay and drifting. So basically you're a winner if you play any version of the game, but we really have to answer which version is the ultimate version of OutRun 2 that you can play. And the wild thing is, none of these versions are actually sold by Sega anymore because they no longer have the license to the Ferrari cars, and it's not something that you can just pop onto Steam or the PlayStation 5 store or anything like Xbox Series X and actually download for $20. And to think that one of Sega's best video games of all time, and in my opinion their best arcade game ever made, isn't readily available for purchase makes it really difficult to deal with any of these things. Because here on SP-SDX you need to download some shader fixes, especially if you're on NVIDIA, where you're going to get completely corrupted graphics, missing a lot of textures and a lot of weirdness, and that's just one of those things. Getting any of these games to run can take a little bit of work. If you're on the 360, you gotta download it somehow without using the online store, and on PC, you have to make sure you get all the patches installed and get everything else going. But once all three are running, all three are spectacular. Look at this light bloom here. Look at the colors on the Lindberg version of the game. They're definitely bright, they're definitely poppy, they have a little bit more shine to them, and they have that Sega vibrancy we know, love, and expect. When we move over to the PC version of the game, it is slightly subdued. Now, I know there's supposed to be some sort of bloom fix where you move a file from one folder to another, but I've tried that on my personal computer and it's never changed anything whatsoever, so I'm not sure what's going on there. We do get some of that bloom off that reflection on the sun, but otherwise it is slightly just a darker game, which is totally fine, maybe a little bit more realistic, and again, a subjective decision that you need to decide for yourself which one you like better. So right now, just leave me a comment down below and tell me, do you like the vibrancy and color profile of the Lindberg version of the game, or do you like it more here on PC? And this is OutRun 2006 Coast to Coast versus OutRun 2 SP-SDX, but they're basically the same game. Sega just could not decide what to actually call this thing. It has so many different names and it gets confusing as to which one has each feature set, but honestly both 2006 as well as SP-SDX are going to be the most fully featured versions of the game. But it's time for your soundtrack sample. It's going to be one of many because this game has absolutely incredible music, and you're going to be listening to the soundtrack sample on the PC version of the game, and I'll explain why after you hear it, but enjoy.
Checkpoint!
Absolutely incredible soundtrack, and it's identical no matter which version you play, so that is a good thing. But we're moving over to the Xbox 360 version here to give you the verdict on telling you this is not the best version of the game to play. I think it does look slightly better than the PC version in the color vibrancy, but there's one reason and one reason only this is not going to be in the running for best version of OutRun 2 ever, and that is because it does not have all of the tracks. Because it was a download only game and there was a download file size restriction back in place on the 360, you do lose features here. So if you want the prettiest version of these 15 tracks, get rid of the PC version and go either over to SP-SDX on the Lindberg or play the Xbox 360 version of the game. But because this lacks a feature set, it has to be disqualified from the running, so it is coming in third place. But honestly, like I said earlier, the reason I gave you the PC version of the soundtrack and said how good of the music it was is because I forgot I've modified my SP-SDX installation to have nothing but Van Halen music playing. It goes from Panama to Hot to Teacher to Jump, and then over to David Lee Roth just to Gigolo, and then resets itself. And that's not anything I can let you listen to on the actual YouTube video because it would just flag. But I love the Xbox 360 version. I like it more than the PlayStation 3 as we discovered in an earlier video, but it does have to come in third place because it just lacks some of the courses and features. And if you want to play OutRun 2, you want to play as much of it as you humanly can, so that is why it has been disqualified. But moving back over to the Lindberg version of the game, this again just looks absolutely spectacular. All of the cars are going to have their shadows, which does get removed from certain versions of the game, and you can run this thing at basically any resolution you want within the INI, so long as you have those NVIDIA shader fixes if you are on an NVIDIA GPU. So if you try to play this game and you notice a bunch of textures missing or corrupted, that means you just need to download the fix, unzip it, and add it into the actual OutRun 2 SP-SDX folder. It only takes about 30 seconds, but it is a hoop you have to jump through that you're not going to have to jump through on the PC version of the game. You download that version with all of the new patches applied, and you should just be off to the races, pun incredibly much intended, when you're actually playing on PC. And that is the nice thing, that modders are keeping this game alive, whether it's on the 360 with bad update or physical mods, whether it's on PC with modders making it look even better and perform on modern Windows systems, or whether it's Teknoparrot or Lindberg loader keeping you playing the actual arcade release without having to go out and buy an expensive arcade board and get all of the controls set up. As we move back over to the PC version of the game, I think the casino area is the one place in which it kind of shows that that muted color profile doesn't work as well. That is the thing, even without the modifications, PC ports are definitely going to look different than the arcade hardware because Lindberg used a very specific GPU so Sega could get the look they wanted. When it gets ported over to something like PC, it has to be able to work on pretty much any GPU out there, and that's the reality of arcade hardware. It is locked off and designed for one feature set versus having to accommodate every single GPU that would have been on the market back in the day with all of the different calls for DirectX and otherwise. So that is not at all surprising that you get a slightly different look even if you are using a PC, which is basically what the Lindberg is, a PC in a box. But now we're going to go to the side-by-side or heads-up comparison, and do be aware later on in the video I'm going to run this entire thing side-by-side so we can go over all the visual changes again in a little bit more depth, but it is just a competition. We're going to move back over and see who's going to actually take this one, whether it's going to be Andy D or whether it's going to be me, so we will find out. But moving to the ice stage here, this is another great example of the difference in color profile. We have the PC version 2006 on the top with the mods, and we have the Lindberg version SP-SDX on the bottom. And you'll see here on the top, it has a way more natural color profile. It kind of just looks like a snowy area, where on the bottom definitely has a lot more of an arcade feel. And if we watch the water here to the left in the lake, you're going to see it is way more natural looking on something like PC, where it has a lot more glow and a little bit of bloom on the actual arcade version. If you know anything about trying to get that bloom to work better on PC, leave me a comment down below because I followed so many different overall tutorials on my end on my PC to try to get it to look any different, and I just could not. But we're coming up to the end of the challenge here. You're going to see that the clock does run ever so slightly different on both versions, so honestly, as far as the challenge is concerned, you'd have to sit side by side and try to make sure everything syncs up, because I sync it up to the end, but it is going to run at a slightly different cadence on the clock every once in a while. We have Andy D on the top, we have Video Game Esoteric on the bottom. We have both run out of time, and you're going to see how incredibly close it was. We finished this stage here 82 to 89%. Video Game Esoteric or myself taking the crown on the 15 race challenge. Now moving over to the original OutRun 2 courses that both 2006 and SP-SDX are going to have, this is why the Xbox 360 version of the game cannot be the best, because it lacks these specific stages, and that is just a bummer. If you want to play the best version of the game, you want 30 stages, not 15, but I'd say the Xbox 360 version still looks better than the PC version, even with all the modifications. Sure, it's not going to be able to achieve the same high frame rates or creature comforts, but if you want the best looking version of a game that isn't SP-SDX, you want to move over to the Xbox 360. And it's time for the second soundtrack sample, just so you guys can hear a little bit more OutRun music, but don't go anywhere, because I've got a ton more content in this video, including some pixel peeping on both versions, so you understand what I mean. But I know I've said it 100 times before, but one more time can't hurt. The music in OutRun 2 is some of the best music Sega's ever made, and it's some of the best music ever set to a video game. So on the actual original courses comparison, I'm running a couple in a row on the PC, then we're going to jump back and run those same courses on the arcade version of the game, so you can get a little bit different of a look than the crisscross I did when we actually compared the 15 course run on SP mode. And this looks absolutely spectacular. I love the overall glow on the back of the Ferrari here, especially in black, and it is nice that maybe the colors aren't so vibrant and hot in certain aspects. Some of the areas definitely play a little bit closer to reality, and some of them play a little bit closer to fantasy. But now that we're through these particular areas, going to Castle Wall, let's roll it back to the Lindberg version of the game and take the exact same course. And in some instances, that sand in the middle of the road maybe is slightly too hot looking and has a little bit too much bloom. It's almost like it's overexposed, and that detail that could be there has fallen off into white. Definitely has a very arcade vibe to it, but it's one of those things, it's going to be subjective again as to which one you like. But the best part is you can play either versions of this game and have an absolute blast. The handling characteristic, the controls, everything like that is going to be perfect. It's going to be one-to-one, and you can play either version and know however you did is down to your talent. It's not that they changed anything in the controls when they ported the game to PC. And trust me, that's not always the case with arcade racing games. San Francisco Rush got a PC port and completely changed up the physics and handling system, making that game feel entirely different and not anywhere near as fun. Now here's an area in which actually that hotness in the white shines. When we come into this area, those clouds just kind of feel a little bit more voluminous, a little bit more bright, and a little bit more dramatic. So across the board, I think SP-SDX can look better in certain instances, and in other instances can look a little bit too bright. It's down to the art style that Sega chose for each individual area's vibe and overall theme, so it might be one of those things. You might like one course on something like SP-SDX better, and you might like another course on OutRun 2006 Coast to Coast on PC with all of the new modifications put in place. As we run through both of these areas, this is the second part of the challenge. We're going to see who gets to the finish line with the best time. And of course, I took the best runs for everybody here, just so we could kind of overall show that challenge with a little bit of fun just inside the comparison, because I wanted to make this kind of a twofold video. Now going back over to 2006 Coast to Coast, we're back at the canyon area, and we're going to be running it again for a couple levels, then going back and forth to compare. Here, I actually like the PC version of the game slightly better because the sky isn't so overexposed. When we actually get to the castle wall, maybe it's a little bit too dark. It is one of those wild things. There's so many different versions of OutRun 2 that are released. Trying to actually condense these all down into a video series that I put up whenever I feel like it has been very challenging. We've gone over the original arcade release compared to the console ports. We've gone over the original arcade release compared to SP-SDX. We've gone over OutRun Online Arcade on PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360. And now we're condensing it down into the actual Championship Edition, SP-SDX versus OutRun 2006 modded versus the 360 version of the game, which did beat out PlayStation 3, but I've already told you in the video the 360 cannot take the win because it just doesn't have both sets of courses, and that is an automatic quote-unquote disqualification. And that's not to say I don't love the Xbox 360 version of the game. I think it is slightly prettier than OutRun 2006 Coast to Coast, but losing those 15 tracks is absolutely just to its own detriment. let's go back from 2006 coast to coast here. We're going to pop back over to SPSDX and run that exact same area, just in a different version of the game, so you can see the overall difference. Here the sky is a little bit brighter, a little bit more vibrant, and the castle walls have a little bit more glow, but maybe the overall color balance is slightly shifted as well. But this is the point in time in which I want you to tell me down below, having seen everything you've seen so far, which version of the game do you think looks better? Do you think it looks better on SPSDX, or do you think it looks better on PC? I'm going to tally up all the votes in the comments. I'm going to leave it in the top of the text description of the video about 72 hours from now, a viewer choice award as to which version is the prettiest of the two. So definitely go down there and put your vote in, and just think about the overall color space, the colorways that you're seeing, the bloom, the overall vibrancy, maybe the slightly over underexposed whites in the brights, and just kind of decide, if you had to only look at one version of this game for the rest of time and you didn't have options, which one it is that you would pick. But I got one more soundtrack sample, that way you can think about your vote before you leave it down below. If you need more time, consider it the Jeopardy final clue music, and I'll be right back.
Checkpoint! How far are you going to take me?
The music here just 100% drives the action. I'm also curious which courses you like better, the original OutRun 2 or OutRun 2 SP. For me, SP's always been the default version of the game that I go to play if I am going to play one of them, and that is the good thing about 2006 as well as SPSDX. I've said those letters so many times, I'm shocked that I've got them in the right order the entire time that I've been doing the voiceover. You get both versions in both builds, and that again, PlayStation 3 and the Xbox 360 lack, and it was so weird back in the day that they had that 2 GB download limit on Xbox. But you're seeing here Andy D on the PC version of the game. He's coming to this checkpoint and he just squeaks it out with 2 seconds left. Now rolling it back to the actual arcade version of the game, we're going to do the exact same thing. And here I would say that that extra volume, that extra kind of brightness, that extra kind of bloom really makes the cloud cover feel a little bit more dense and a little bit more socked in compared to the PC version. So I'm going to tell you which version of the game I think is prettier right now that you've actually had a chance to vote. If I had to play one version of OutRun 2 for the rest of time and I had to pick my favorite visuals, I'm going with the Lindberg version, OutRun 2 SPSDX. But again, it is the harder version to run just because you have to get those NVIDIA shaders patched up so that you actually aren't just looking at half of the missing textures. Sometimes I think this game can be a little bit overexposed in the whites, but otherwise the vibrancy, the color, and the overall impact of the visuals just hit slightly better for me on SPSDX. But we're coming into the final area here on OutRun 2, the original courses, and you're going to see that Andy D's got 38 seconds left, so let's see at what point in time he crossed the finish line so I can compare it to my finish and see if this last test actually ended up in a tie again on the performance of both of us capturing is concerned, or if we can actually finally name a winner in this completely imaginary, made up, nobody cares about rivalry between Andy D and I, because it's not even a rivalry. I just added this into the video because I love to have fun and I wanted to see who could actually take the checkered flag. You're going to see a couple bumps there at the end are going to be a little bit unfortunate. We're down to the 7-second mark here, 6, 5, not going to keep counting, and you're going to see that unfortunately Andy D comes up ever so slightly short of the goal, not quite getting over the finish line. He left 68% of the actual end of course done, but that number doesn't make any sense because he raced a lot more than that. Sometimes the percentages don't actually seem to add up in my opinion. Now moving over to the same section in SPSDX, this is an area where the tulips are more vibrant, the sky's a little bit brighter, and the colors just hit that much more. So we're going to see where I end up here and how many seconds I have left when and if I actually cross the finish line. Because even go entirely left here on the easy mode, if you make too many mistakes, you're never going to see the actual checkered flag and finish line, because these games are quite challenging. You're never quite sure how you're going to do, and because the traffic patterns can be slightly organic, honestly, compared comparing one run to one run in and of itself isn't even really a fair thing. It is just for fun. But you're going to see here I'm coming around the final bend with 30 seconds left, and I'm going to take both challenges here, having finished, gotten to the goal with 27 seconds left on the clock. Proving one more time that Midwest is best, and there is no disputing that. And if you want a direct comparison of OutRun 2006 Coast to Coast versus OutRun 2 SPSDX, I will upload a separate video next Sunday evening doing the entire run without talking whatsoever, so you can just compare every single turn side by side in this run. But leave me a comment down below and tell me which one you like better. But here is my ultimate determination as far as which is the best version of OutRun 2 ever made. The reality is, and this might be a little bit of a disappointment, is between the PC version and the Lindberg version, it is a straight up tie. I can't say one version is better than the other just because that's slightly different colors. Both are incredibly fun, both have the same physics and handling system, both are incredibly just so joyous to play. It is one of Sega's best games of all time, so no matter which version you play, you're going to have some epic Hall of Fame good levels of fun. But leave me a comment down below and yell at me if you think a tie is not a fun way to end it. But we're done. I'll see you guys next time. Bye bye.